Hey there, welcome. We're back at the Financial Advisor podcast and going live out here to YouTube, hopefully. And um, we have Mindy Godfrey and Bob Dunn with me, and we're going to talk briefly about just some stuff that seems to be how Dan Kennedy phrased it, teaching cavemen about fire type of technological breakthroughs that, from a standpoint of our background in online and offline marketing, seems like a just kind of a normal thing to do, but it seems like it's what is common sense and common practice in one field is totally new and different in this field. But let's Bob, maybe let's talk about converting one. Let's go back a step. And I follow all of the advisor sales conversations online, and we work with a bunch of the big companies, Northwestern Mutual and so forth. But advisors tend to have been groomed on almost the Hollywood view of what a stockbroker is 100 cold dialing for dollars, cold outbound calls. And as do not call lists started happening, when they couldn't do that with residential lists, either shifting to calling people at work, which of course is still fine if you can get hold of them, but shifting to cold contacting on LinkedIn. And there is some, the reality is that works. I mean, my standard joke is, why not just go to the gated community with the homes, with 3-4 car garages on the golf course and knock on doors, because of course you'd be more effective face to face. But one of the things I think it's missing is the whole idea of what direct response marketing is, which, to put it in simplest terms, is instead of making a cold contact using your labor, is you communicate using media and rake across, say, 1,000 people to get 10 of them to raise their hand who are obviously interested. And then once you get them to raise your hand, you connect with those people directly. And Bob, you've been in the situation. I mean, in our previous iteration of one of our companies, before I was there, you were basically given a list of 15,000 prospects and told to, dial for dollars every day and make cold contacts.
Right.
And now you're essentially exclusively talking to people who've raised their hand, who are currently in the market. Talk about how that changes the perspective on the conversations.
Well, it dramatically, you can spend, the value of your time and where you've got it focused changes the dynamics of your daily activity, obviously. So, being able to aggressively go after qualified prospects, via calling, texting, emailing, leaving messages, looking them up, friending them on Facebook. You can spend all of that extra time instead of just dialing through blank numbers, hoping to get the right person, and invest that time into, one particular qualified prospect to get them on the phone and start speaking to them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we start with that premise is, we would always rather get to large groups, whether in person, let me go speak to 100 people, let me speak to 500 people, let me speak to 2,500 people, or through media. So let's show ads on Facebook, show ads on LinkedIn, show ads, in different online media, Google, get in front of them on pay-per-click. There's a huge amount of search traffic, or send postcards, send direct mail letters, solicitations, and get them to raise their hand, and then aggressively and effectively communicate with those people once they've raised their hand. And that really is the subject that we wanted to talk about, is once you get them to raise their hand, what do you do with them, and how do you follow up from there? The first step, I think, tends to be is advisors give up pretty quickly on follow-up, especially from online leads, right? So if I'm, what we know is, if we're running ads on Facebook, we're running ads on LinkedIn, we're running ads on Google, that if I get hold of the person within let's say 30 seconds of them filling out a form, I'm going to have a massively better conversion rate than if I call them the next day, for instance, right? And so what we design the systems to do is they fill out a form online if that's their mechanism for response, and we can talk about alternative response mechanisms. But if they're filling out a form online, what we do is we set the form up, and as soon as the form is filled out, it does several things. It sends whoever's going to initiate an outbound call an immediate text, not email, although it does that as a backup, but it sends them immediate text with the name, the information that they gave, and an active phone number, so that they can just hit the active phone number in the text and do an outbound dial, right? The second thing we do is for the prospect is we send them a text, presumably from whoever's going to make the outbound call, about, hey, we're available now. Here's the number I'm at. Give me a call. But we also send them a contact record, meaning literally, hit the contact record, add to your database. And now when an incoming call comes, it's not going to be from an unknown number. And there are some ways around the unknown number thing now. The cell phone companies are starting to get a little bit of a directory. So, I noticed that Fisher, when I play prospect with them, that it comes through as Fisher, even if that particular number isn't in my database. But mostly, if an advisor is doing it from their internal Northwestern Mutual number, or from a cell phone number, or their RIA number, mostly it's going to show up as unknown. And we know that people on cell phones don't answer unknown numbers with great regularity. It's probably 8 or 9 out of 10 won't answer that. So what we do is we send an immediate text, but we also send a contact record. We also do an autoresponder email. And then let's get into some terminology. So the follow-up mechanisms that we use are text message, email, voicemail, direct mail, as well as retargeting. What I mean by retargeting is you can show ads specifically on Facebook and Instagram, on Google and all of their related properties, and on LinkedIn, that specifically is they just filled out this form, or they landed on my website. Doesn't have to be they filled out anything, and now I can automatically show ads. We can also retarget by direct mail, and if you didn't know it, there are also companies now that can pull name, phone number, mailing address based on IP address. So what happens is you put the code on your website, they land on the website, and now you can get a readout of everybody who showed up at your well, not everybody, they're not going to get 100% match, but you can get a read of people who showed up at your website who didn't fill out the form, and in many cases have their name, mailing address, and so forth. And in fact, we target immediately by direct mail. We had, Mindy, Bob, 500 postcards that went out last month for people who showed up at one of our websites who didn't fill out the form, that immediately got a retargeting postcard, as well as Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, and Google ads. And that was a mouthful, but let's kind of go back to the sales process. So Mindy, you're in the middle of the sales follow-up as well. Describe how that works a little bit differently than what these typical advisors think. And of course, you've now worked with hundreds of financial advisors. How is it different, and how is it much more efficient?
Well, I think, for starters, you've got people who are interested in you. They're looking for something that you're offering because they've made that connection. And so that's that first key. You've got that connection, you've got that rapport. So you have a starting place. And in our case, we're offering articles and different books and downloads and things. And so I can see what they've opted in to get and ask them a question about that. Hey, I noticed that you ordered our 10 things that helps advisors succeed. How's that working for you? Have you had a chance to try any of those out?
Yeah.
And it really helps open up that conversation a lot more naturally, and really helps you start to get to the heart of what they need more quickly.
Yeah. That's right. But the second element of this, and this is now speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but it's both of them are valid, is the minute somebody raises their hand, they're, if you will, in heat for the information that you're providing. So you want to get to them right away. And nowadays, we used to say when you're doing, say, television advertising, you had to get 7 exposures before they notice that you exist. I think that number is probably triple or quadruple now. But also what's happened is people's attention span has truncated dramatically. So if I could be thumping around online and have an idea and I go search for it, usually I'm searching for it on my iPhone or maybe Android phone. But then 10 other things come up and you're out of sight, out of mind, and I've forgotten about you, right? Now, what the other side of it is, and this is the other, talking out both sides of my mouth, is we almost always give up on leads way too early. So even the most industrious advisors that I've seen, what they'll do is, maybe have a 29-day drip sequence exclusively by email where they follow up, and then they'll ask can them, assuming they're not interested. And Bob, what's our philosophy about following up on leads?
Never give up until they tell you to leave them alone. We just say completely stay on them. And to be frankly honest, life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they've meant to I've continued to follow up with them and finally get in contact with them. Could be a month later. And they've, literally said, hey, I apologize. Yeah, I've been following you guys, checking you out, but I had blah, blah, blah happen. And, but things have kind of calmed down now. Yeah, let's have a discussion. So,
well, for our coaching and consulting business, our internal, it's both a testament to longevity, but it's also a frustration. Is I think the last 6 clients that we brought in all said some version of, I've been following you for 20 years. I've been following you for 7 years. I've been following you for 3 years. I've known about you for 5 years. One of them said, this was, peak COVID. I pulled the dusty book off my bookshelf that I remembered that I read and decided that maybe you could help me. We had another one that had been, a client 15 years ago or 10 years ago from Christina from Seattle, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and so what happens is, and it's also the advantage and the frustration of content marketing is, in our case, we have, massive blogs on our site, meaning lots of articles and content. We have a variety of books that are out in the market. We have training programs that are out in the market. We have the podcast that's on, what is it, Mindy? 23 different directories or something like that, but it's certainly on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify,
Audible.
Yeah, all of those. And then we have the YouTube channel, and we have the email list, and we have, every other damn thing. So, and that's the other thing you don't get is that, you may have a client who is kind of looking into advisors. Maybe they have somebody that they're unhappy with, or they think that they're a guru during a bull market and they're doing their own stuff, and then all of a sudden they get punched in the nose. Like right now would be for instance, in our stagflation, Jimmy Carter Redux administration. But all of a sudden when crisis hits, and most advisors think it's the opposite, is everybody's eager for them in a bull market and pulling back in a bear market. But the reality is both is true. Is each has their own opportunities, and I would argue the more uncertainty there is in the market, the more they can be convinced that they need your expertise. But yeah, Bob, as you were saying, we never give up. It's and by the way, if somebody opts out of the email list, they're still going to get text messages. They're going to still get direct mail pieces. They're going to still get retargeting on Google and Facebook and LinkedIn. They're still going to get all kinds of different ways that we're going to follow up with them. And of course, they can opt out of the text message list as well. But it's regardless. I mean,
and by not doing anything, sir, it's it's a sure way to make sure that they'll forget about you.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's imperative that you stay, you constantly try to stay in front of them. Again, like I said, life gets in the way, and it doesn't mean that they're not interested in you because they didn't respond right away. So continue down that path until you make contact, or they tell you that they don't want you to bother them anymore.
Yeah. They're gonna track you down and murder your firstborn if you ever talk to them again.
But
which I don't think we've ever literally had that, but
no.
I just use that as an example of
it's mostly the opposite though. I mean, from what I find, it's that I've definitely been interested. I appreciate you pinging me, tapping me on my shoulder, and given the stuff that we hand out a ton of stuff, to really stay in front of our prospective clients.
Yeah. Well, and again, as an example, let's show this little graphic that Merrick put together for the new book. And by the way, new book is being released right now. Extraordinary Marketing for Financial Advisors. It's what is it, Mindy? Plus or minus 350 pages. Is really a really valuable material, I believe. But this is from the introduction, and looks pretty complicated. But let's just simplify it on what we're talking about. Is you always have to do, and I'll use I believe it was Seth Godin's terms of permission marketing. I believe Seth Godin's term was permission marketing. Wrote a book on that. But permission marketing is in a sense, the current trend. But you don't start with permission marketing. You start with, in his terminology, interruption marketing. You have to, in some way, shape, or form, get their attention to begin with. The whole idea of permission marketing is they have, in some way, shape, or form, raised their hand to say that they're interested in what you're doing. And the advantage nowadays on online marketing is that, and by the way, this is why not only should privacy, it's good that privacy is dead, is the genius of Google and the genius of Facebook and the genius of the other online sites that are thriving is they show you things that you're interested in and hide stuff that you're not interested in. So they use all of the information they've gathered about you to show you things that you're currently looking for. And to some extent, that's the remarketing and retargeting campaign. But they use that information to show you things that you're likely to be interested in. And if you prove not to be interested, you don't see those things anymore. But you've got to do something here at the outset on the left column to get their attention. And frankly, email probably shouldn't be on this list because, short of spamming a list, that's a permission marketing tool, not a interruption marketing tool. But you speak at somebody else's event. So, let's say somebody has 500 dentists rounded up in a room, or better yet, 5,000 of them. You go speak as the expert in that field. Or, let's say you have a client appreciation event and your clients on average bring 1.5 friends, and you generate referrals through a system like that. Or you have a webinar or a Zoom meeting or some other event, or it could be that you're having your annual review with a client and they give you, their brother-in-law who needs help. But whatever it might be, you generate a referral, or you're buying banner ads, you're doing radio spots. We have some very, very successful advisors we work with who buy an hour slot on the weekends and have their own radio show, which again has worked very well in many different markets. Typically, you're looking at maybe the local Christian station, or you're looking at the station that used to play Rush Limbaugh, who's now got Sean Hannity and the gang. and it's a talk radio station, and they don't have regular programming on the weekends. Usually Saturday morning, Sunday morning, they'll sell you an hour slot. Or you're doing a print ad, newspaper, magazine, one thing or another. You're doing Facebook ads at targeted list, etc. You get the idea. You could be in front of search on Google, Bing, and so forth, doing direct mail to a targeted list and so forth. But what happens is they then online, they almost always get driven to a website. We would call it a landing page, a very simple short form website where they fill out a form, and that's their mechanism for essentially raising their hand and giving you content. Or I always prefer they pick up the phone and call us. And by the way, if they pick up the phone and call you and they get voicemail, you're screwed. I just gave up on a company because nobody answered their phone. So you've got to have somebody answering your phone. But then what happens is they complete an opt-in form, and you now go into a text message, an automatic voicemail, a direct mail sequence, an email follow-up, but you follow up with them, all with the idea of getting them to schedule an appointment. And your decision tree is, and it shows here you were accessed information. In other words, you're giving them some kind of free offer. But your decision tree there is, have they or have they not yet scheduled an appointment? If they have scheduled an appointment, you do a follow-up sequence to make sure they show up for their appointment, and they're prepped for their appointment, and they're impressed by what they're likely to see. If they haven't scheduled an appointment, one, you're retargeting them, you're doing follow-up to get them to schedule an appointment. And by the way, I can do narrow market retargeting with video of, hey, you were interested enough in this information. I'm happy to, no charge, no obligation, clarify how it applies in your specific situation. You can do that kind of video on Google that follows them around. So, but you get the idea. I mean, that's the kind of follow-up that you want. Same thing over here is, we'll integrate direct mail, email, voicemail, text with follow-up, as well as retargeting with follow-up. But with all of it is, the default has become email. And what's it been now, Bob? 1999. I wrote the first extraordinary marketing program that was all about internet marketing. It was an internet marketing book on how to do search marketing back in the age of what was it, Alta Vista, and Yahoo as a directory, and the only paid source was GoTo, which eventually got bought up by Yahoo, became Overture, and eventually Google stole the idea to create their revenue model. But I did a book back then, and back then I loved email. It was in the age of, remember the movie Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, You've Got Mail? But remember what was happening? I think it was Tom Hanks on his houseboat in Seattle is sitting there staring at his computer, waiting for the mailbox to click and ding on AOL, or CompuServe, whatever it was at the time, You've Got Mail. Well, nobody does that anymore. What they do is they look at their email inbox and they have 220 and they're pissed off. Instead of in rapture waiting for the next message, which is so special, they're annoyed that they have to sort through 100 work emails and 100 commercial emails and 5 friends sending them dirty jokes and so forth. And that they have to clear out their inbox, because if they ignore it, somebody at work gets mad at them, or maybe spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend gets mad at them. But they're not happy about it. They're pissed off about it, right? So what the world has changed dramatically in that way. So what we know is email is dying a slow and painful death. It's not dead. To some extent, COVID gave it a little bit of a resuscitation. But what we know is it's dying a slow and painful death, and people's state of mind when they're looking at email is negative, not positive. It's certainly not You've Got Mail and they're happy about the mailbox clicking. They're just trying to clear through their mailbox. And even open rates are skewed. As I understand it, like if you scroll through your mail on your phone, is most of the tracking systems show that as an open, even though they're seeing the subject line and maybe the first couple preview lines, they haven't actually clicked on the email and tried to look at it. So open deliverability rates are way down. In other words, Yahoo, AOL, and so forth, just throw away a bunch of emails. Google, if they deliver it, they put it in a spam folder. And if you're not careful, even if you're out of the spam folder, you're in the promotional folder, which is just as bad as like the old joke of how do you, the witness protection program is show up on the third page of Google. You show up in the promotional folder and nobody's looking at it. So that's why we use text, because it's as useful now, more or less, as the old you've got mail era of email. It's going to die because again, there's so much promotional. My iPhone is now putting my top 3 messengers, people who communicate with me, up on the top, and 2 of the 3 are promotional emails that I'm getting. So to give you an idea, people are going to start ignoring that. But direct mail, people get an average of 200 or more emails a day, but they get an average of 4 pieces of direct mail a day. You're much more likely to be seen. But my thought about it is nobody prints out an email and puts it under the magnet on their refrigerator, but a postcard does that. I end up with somebody mails me a book. I use it as a coaster on the desk and then think about it a month later. I stack up, I'll have their postcard because I mean to get back to them and follow up one thing or another. So there's those various combinations. Mindy, Bob, what would you add to that?
I can jump in. I mean, that flow chart, sir, is I'm pretty confident it was a little overwhelming for a lot of people that were looking at that, and just so many components that you had in there too. I mean, we could really embellish on and how to make those or perfect those different mechanisms to work better.
Yeah.
If I may, I mean, I'd love for you guys to visit us at advisorwealthmastery.com, and we'd be happy to chat with you and see if we can maybe talk through some of those components that you just got through showing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, I guess we should wrap up pretty quickly, but I will remind everybody, I can show a cover shot here. We are rapidly in the middle of releasing the new book, Extraordinary Marketing for Financial Advisors. Mindy, they can go to Advisor Wealth Mastery, or they can give you a call. What is it? 303-808
8719.
8719. They can give you a call or go to the website, and we'll give them all the information for receiving the copy. It will be at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all of those things. I don't think the bookstores are going to actually stock something this targeted, but it'll be on the bnn.com, amazon.com, etc. Websites here before long. But mostly, if you give us a call, we'd be happy to gift it to you with the only request that you give us feedback. If you love it, give us a 5-star testimonial. If you hate it, tell us privately, and we'll take your feedback for what it's worth, good or bad, and go from there. But anyway, Mindy, anything to add to this subject? I mean, we only skimmed the surface, but we were talking to an advisor yesterday who only read the introduction to the book, overlaid a couple of the steps that he wasn't doing before. He was only using LinkedIn, and he created 18 appointments, and that was before like noon on Monday morning for his practice. Right? Again, he did the follow-ups. Again, he didn't get past the introduction of the book and used the ideas that he came across, driving them directly to a scheduling link, and made 18 appointments. I mean, that's a pretty good way to start the week in anybody's estimation.
Absolutely. That's a great way to start your week.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, we'll call it a day. Hopefully this has been helpful for everybody. And I remind you of the new book coming out, and we've got the marketing package and one thing or another available for everybody as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.